Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me in this personal branding series which I'm running. So I'm interviewing a lot of thought leaders on what personal branding means for a variety of audiences, and therefore what are some of the nuances of it. So before we start, it'll be great if you could just give a few lines about your background and who you are and what you do.
Thanks so much, Anisha, for inviting me on this. Um, I am a leadership coach and I advocate self leadership.
Mhm,
So, what I feel for currently with the teams that are turning more virtual, with
mhm,
the millennial workforce inside, with the abused term that we are using, overused, VUCA
mhm,
world,
mhm,
we do live in uncertain times where it would be very difficult for people in various walks of life at the speed of change to do the top down leadership, specifically because we are trying to make people to
mhm,
ideate and come out with beautiful ideas and means, and that cannot be done on command or on tap. So
mhm.
therefore, the one place where I feel today's leadership should be is on self leadership, and that is the one place where I advocate, I research, I coach people towards.
Mm, fantastic. I mean, I also noticed that you started your career as a academician, and you got a PhD now, and you authored a book. So I'm sure there's a lot which viewers will be benefiting from this conversation. So let me begin by asking you the most fundamental question. So, in your definition, what is personal branding?
I strongly feel that a personal brand is a promise of what you stand for, of your values, of your strengths, of living. You're the living validation of what you tell outside.
Mm,
So I'm a leadership coach and I advocate first to lead yourself. So the way
mhm,
I lead myself and the way I live and walk what I talk, now that
mhm.
is my personal brand.
Mm, okay. So what you talk, what you say, what you do is really what you're saying is your personal brand. Okay. And so I'm assuming that you consider yourself as a personal brand. And if what are some of those signs which tell you that yes, I am a personal brand?
So I think everyone is a personal brand because we all promise something, and there are some expectations in the mind of audience always, whether you tell them or not. So everyone is a personal brand. The more important question to me will be: am I an authentic personal brand, or am I being effective in communicating my promise to others? So by that logic, yes, I generally walk what I talk, and therefore I consider myself a personal brand, an effective and authentic one at that.
But what are some of those signs which tell you that yes, you are progressing towards your journey of building a personal brand, or what are those indicators?
All right. So how do I know that? Is the effectiveness and this authenticity lies between that gap of what you promise and
Mm,
what others expect and perceive. So the lesser that gap, the more
mm,
effective you are. So if I were to say how would I go about doing this, it would
mm,
be the gap is it is actually a space between the two minds of
mm,
me and my audience. So
mm,
on one side is my mind, where there is this grand promise of what I can do, what I can coach, and what I advocate. And
mm,
then on the other side is the mind of my audience. So
mm,
this is what they perceive and form an image of who I am. Now, to
mm.
ensure that we both are on the same page,
Mm,
there are, again, as a coach, of course, I have three questions instead of three steps. And
okay.
uh, I firmly believe that the questions that you ask gives you
Mm,
the answer that you actually want. So
okay.
instead of the steps, so the first question would be: is your promise something that you truly believe in?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Because the fact that you need to truly believe in what you're saying. So if you are saying that I'm a digital marketer, do you really believe that this is the way
mm,
everyone can succeed? If you're
mm,
saying if you're saying that you're a fitness coach, do you believe
mm,
in it? Do you
mm,
advocate what you do?
mm,
If you say healthy living and healthy eating,
mm,
do I ever see you with a pizza?
mm,
So
mm,
is that promise something that you truly believe in? And
mm,
then are you living your promise in everything that you do, you say, and you act? So
mm.
that is where the authenticity comes in.
Got it.
you know But it is not just for us as human beings.
Mm,
We do the same thing when we're talking about Nike or Starbucks or anything. When the
mm,
minute the brand comes to mind and they behave in a place where they are not supposed to, immediately that
mm,
promise, the dejection and the loss of trust in that promise that they did is hard
mm,
hitting. And I think that
mm,
is exactly the same for people. So if we are saying and we stand for something and we don't walk that talk, that
mm,
trust that shatters in the minds of your audience is a very, very, it suddenly pushes that chasm and the gap too high.
mm, mm,
And I
mm,
think that is where,
mm,
you're a personal brand when that gap is very less. And the
mm, mm,
last one is, are you taking steps to ensure your audience sees the process and the
mm,
results?
mm,
So
mhm.
for me, three questions, which would the answers would obviously form three steps
Right. So
in
you're saying, are
building
you
a
taking
great personal
steps
brand.
your audience, are you taking steps your audience sees in what you're doing? Is that what you meant?
Yes. So there is the first thing is in my mind. So because I have to close this gap in the minds of my audience as well. So
Mm,
whatever we do, the promises that we give as a brand.
mm,
Now this is the image that I want to create in the minds of myself. In
right.
the minds of audience. That is from my side.
Yeah.
But what do audience perceive me about?
Mm,
So
mm,
I need to know if I am taking all the steps, and specifically because I believe in self leadership. So if I have to be part of a solution, I
mm,
definitely am part of the problem as well.
got
So
it. Right.
so what are the steps that I'm taking to ensure that my audience sees the process and that result? So
Mm,
am I walking my talk? Am I advocating and am I showing in the way in which I live? I coach, I speak with people, I carry myself.
mm,
Am
mm,
I living the promise that I'm
mm.
making?
Got it. Brilliant. That's excellent. So, what does one do to go about building a personal brand? So, how would you kind of talk about that?
Um, so the process, if I think it is the three steps would be to ask these questions, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and if I have to take a stepwise process, the first I think is looking inwards and
Mm,
deciding what your promise should be.
mm,
So
mm,
if your promise is something that you truly believe in,
mm,
and if you are able, do you really find that this is what it is, or I and that is where the
mm,
personal your the difference between
mm,
being an authentic personal brand and just playing an act comes into being.
mm, mm,
And
mm,
today I think with the amount of information and
mm,
everything that is there, the audience outside is pretty brilliant,
mm, mm,
and they can figure out and they can
mm,
definitely know where
mm,
the act starts and
mm,
where the authenticity ends. So those
mm,
lines are not very blurred anymore. They're pretty with HD video they are all very clear.
mm, mm, mm,
So I think the first step would be to be very, so the first step is always in creating that authenticity,
mm, mm.
knowing your goals, where you want to be,
Right.
create that clear promise, and
Mm,
having a and it would be better to have a heightened sense of self-awareness at this point,
mm, mm,
when you're trying to say the promise. So I'm going to say that
mm,
self-leadership is
mm,
is everything, or if I would say conversations
mm,
are one of the biggest ways in which you can solve a lot of conflict. And then the
mm,
minute some fight happens in a WhatsApp group and I'm not
mm,
doing it,
mm,
I'm not living my promise, am I? So
mm,
that so if you're not believing in it, might
mm,
as well not promise it.
mm,
So be very
mm,
careful in that first step.
mm,
Your What do you promise to the world? If you're
mm,
saying I am a person who can tell you how to sell anything, then
mm,
and if you have written a book and if you have written something or if you have got a product out, and if
mm,
I don't see you sell yourself very well, then your
mm.
authenticity goes away.
Got it. Okay. So the first step was, you said, looking inwards, then creating your promise. What else is any other steps you have in mind?
The next step is to ensure that the promise that you make, the audience sees it.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
this is the transference where, I have seen the promise, yes, but
Mm.
I need to take steps to make you
Got it.
believe and
Mm.
trust in me that
Mm.
this promise will work for you as well.
Got
And
it. Brilliant.
that responsibility is on me.
Right. Excellent. And what are some of the attributes of a personal brand? And if I were to ask you, how do people see you? So what are some of those traits which they look at you and say, yes, this is what, Dr. Latha is about?
I think the biggest attribute is alignment
Okay.
between your promise and your audience expectation.
Mm.
And what people associate me generally with my strength in coaching, in
Okay.
writing, in research,
Mm.
and managing conflicts. Actually,
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
one person who rarely steps into a conflict and not mediate it. So,
Mm. Mm.
if you see, my promise is also to bring out the leader in everyone, and
Mm.
I do this through my coaching, my books, and my conversations. So
Mm.
the success,
Mm.
is how do I know if I have succeeded in this? Is
Mm.
when people approach me for
Mm.
the promise that I'm making
Mm.
without me selling it to them.
Correct.
So, when someone calls up and says, "Hey, Latha, you know what? We're doing something in writing. Would you want to be part of this? Or would you
Mm.
want to mentor or lead or coach or whatever?" So I
Mm.
know that people already appreciate me for something which I don't really,
Mm.
I show it in my work. My work speaks, but I don't advertise it.
Mm.
In the same way, if people need someone to coach to and they are low on confidence, or if they are in
Mm.
a conflict, the first
Mm.
person they call is me, even if
Mm.
they're not clients, it's just friends or anyone for that matter. They just
Mm.
reach out to me and say, "Listen, I have this problem, and do you think you can
Mm.
help me out?" So I
Mm.
know that I am actually living and walking the talk that I promise,
Mm.
and people are able to recognize and trust
Mm.
in me for the promise that
Mm.
I make.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Very nice. And based on your learning observations, who, according to you, is a personal brand? If you could name a couple of names, and also what are those characteristics that you personally admire about them?
Um, so there's this person called Peter Redding. Okay,
Mhm.
he's a transformational coach, and I'm
Okay.
humbled by his work. So I have
Mhm.
met him just once at a conference in Mumbai, and I
Mhm.
attended just an hour session, but it completely transformed how I saw myself.
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm.
1 hour, and he just spoke. It was not even a coaching session. So I'm thrilled. I hope one day I would attend his entire coaching repertoire.
Okay.
But he lives and breathes what he preaches. And
Mhm.
this translates into his coaching, and the results are stunning. So
Mhm.
I one day hope to emulate and be that
Okay.
person, when
Mhm.
I say something and people say, "Oh, really?" And then if I speak with them for 1 hour, they can
Mhm.
feel that transformation in themselves. I hope
Mhm.
I can be that person one day.
Great. Great. Fantastic. And what steps did you personally take to build your brand? Because I noticed your journey from being an academician to being coach to be a workshop facilitator, and now I noticed that you are focusing a lot on the millennials. So what are some of the steps you personally took?
So I think, uh, see, the promise that I have made as
Mm,
which in the parlance as a brand
mm,
is the fact that if you are able to lead yourself, and the journey to leading yourself
mm,
is yours. It is a beautiful journey,
mm,
and you need to know that. So what I have done first is a personal journey. So at every time that I have faced any kind of crisis,
mm,
I have looked at what it would teach me,
mm,
and I have been very clear about that early
mm,
on. So
mm,
at every transition, sometimes the journey is
mm,
the roadblocks, and those rough roads are not so much the obstacle. The
mm,
obstacles are actually in all those beautiful parking lots and photographic points that you get down and waste a lot of time in.
mm,
They make your destination so much later. So the
mm.
biggest distraction in my life are my two kids, and I keep playing mom always.
Okay.
And yeah, so the career always takes a second beat for a long, long time. Now my kids are
Mm,
grown up. um,
mm,
so I concentrate a lot more on
mm,
me and my career. But the
mm,
biggest distraction has always been their smiling faces, and I would always adjust every
mm,
part of my career to ensure that I'm home faster.
mm,
So I have taken that from HR. I moved to academics when my
mm,
baby was born, and I moved to doing things on my own when they grew
mm,
up because I thought I will
mm,
explore a lot more. So
mm,
working on my strength and my priorities had been
mm,
so. As a
mm,
leader, the one thing that I was very clear was I need to
mm,
know what is my constant and what are
mm,
variables. So I can change my variables at any point in time,
mm,
but my
mm,
constant was two things. One was my ability to understand people and work on human beings alone. So I did that as in HR.
mm,
I moved and
mm,
started teaching the same subjects in academics. And slowly I
mm,
decided that I could really, really coach well. And so I got my certifications and everything
mm,
there.
mm,
So that's my first constant. The second
mm,
constant is me as a mom. I don't think I
mm,
would ever delegate that work to another person. So
mm,
I'm a hands-on mom. So
mm,
that so all the other things for me are working around these two constant. I cannot take
mm,
these away from me, and I live and breathe them.
mm,
And the second step that I took was to build on
mm,
my strength. My
mm,
strength is academics. I have always been this nerd, boring person in college and school, and would get all those good scores,
mm,
always with a book. So I think it didn't sound very
mm,
nice when you are in
mm,
college, and the marks are not so great when you're not really a very interesting person. You're generally boring. Okay, but
mm,
as you grow up in life, you
mm,
realize that they are actually a strength. So,
mm,
uh, doing a PhD when I had a baby in hand was one of the easiest decisions that I could take because that was my strength. So
mm,
I played on my strength. Um,
mm,
so I had this amazing crisis time. My son was born in 2007,
mm,
and the world locked itself down again in a financial crisis.
mm,
And
mm,
I had just taken this brilliant decision of taking a
mm,
break for 2 years and going back to work. But
mm,
2009, I don't think there was anyone ready to give me a job. After a 2-year break, that also
mm,
right on the other side of the financial recession, and I was
mm,
not here at that time.
mm, mm,
And so 2008,
mm,
2009, I decided that the easiest way for me would be to invest in myself because
mm,
I anyway wanted to take this break, and
mm,
I signed up for my PhD. So by the
mm,
time my son grew up and went to school, I
mm,
was I had a degree in hand, and then I went
mm,
back to work. So
mm,
the resume looked good, and my transition was natural. But I also
mm,
managed to live up to what I feel that are my
mm,
concepts and my strengths.
mm,
And the most important thing is I delegate my weaknesses. So things that I don't, it's not
mm,
going to be possible by me to do. I don't break my
mm,
head for it. I
mm,
delegate. Source, get
mm.
it done. Shout for help, beg, borrow, but I don't do it.
Okay, brilliant. I like this. I mean, very, very real scenario, and I know a lot of, working moms or moms will relate to this quite easily. So how, what are some of those challenges that, like you mentioned, some of the crises that you faced during your journey, but were there some specific challenges, bottlenecks, I mean, which you kind of realized were very tough and how you could move around them, work around them? What techniques did you use to overcome them?
So for me, when I said, the personal brand, there are the three questions that are there. So my first two questions are very nice, and I have
Mm,
decently managed to master them. But the last question is a work in progress. So the
mm,
last question of, am I able to put it into the minds of my audience of what I stand for is a big work in progress for me. And that
mm,
is where all my bottlenecks come in. Because in
mm,
today's world, that knowledge and tech is a must. And that is my handicap.
mm,
So
mm,
it's a very slow and painful step. But the last
mm,
20 days, I have learned how to actually do some video
mm,
editing and things. And hopefully, I will actually learn to shout out. Um,
mm.
so um, that is something that I have
Hello, you there? I think yeah,
yes.
you're there.
So that is one of the biggest challenges I think that I have. And um, the other challenges are more on the side of how I communicate this to people and uh, staying on track. I think another big challenge is always on staying on track. So
mm,
if for example, the
mm,
thrill of the shifting of the roads is beautiful,
mm,
you know.
mm,
Specifically when I'm saying that I'm a leadership coach and then I've written 3 books. So
mm,
what happens is I immediately get a call
mm,
from people saying, would you want to speak to us or talk to us on how to write a book or
mm,
guide us or mentor us on doing those things? Now,
mm,
I don't think I'm qualified to guide another person. I just do them well myself. But
mm,
I'm a coach on how to make you a leader. So the
mm,
saying no has been a is a challenge, something which I try to succeed. I don't
mm,
do things just because someone says, hey, you're doing good, so can you teach me also?
mm,
I
mm,
somewhere I push and say, I'm not qualified. I'm a coach. I have been
mm,
trained and I
mm,
really know how to ensure that you become a leader. You are the hero in your life. But I
mm.
don't know if I can tell you that you would become a best selling author in your life just because I wrote one.
Right,
So
right.
telling no has been another challenge. But I
Okay.
think that's something which I'm comfortable in.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's a great point because I know a lot of people find that hard to say no because you always want to help others, please others, and you end up, so I think it's a great point.
Yes, it also
Now,
looks like a thrill, you know. Ah, I can do that also. Oh, I'm this. I can wear a few more hats. The thing is, you
yeah,
dilute your brand. Then
mm,
people don't
yeah,
know what they should come to you about. And sometimes you're not very good in all the hats that you wear, and that
mm,
dilutes the trust. And
yeah,
I try not.
brilliant. Yeah. So if I were to ask you in your journey, what are some of the things I know you kind of briefly alluded to family time and all that, but what are some of the things that you gained personally and professionally? What are some of the things you lost in the journey?
So, what I gained, I think, in the process of self leadership in my own journey has been confidence and comfort in my own self, and definitely satisfied clients.
Mm,
People who are happy that I could make a difference in their lives. And I think that is my biggest asset, trust
mm,
in the minds of people for what I stand for. And when someone tells me, you know, Latha, you can come home to my house anytime, and my wife will thank you for, you know, because you taught me how to be a leader, but now I'm a better husband.
mm,
Or when someone says, I've been struggling with this one point and not meeting my shadow for so long, and suddenly you're telling me that,
mm,
wow, life sounds so nice. So those
mm,
are the things that I have gained really, really much in the
mm.
process. What I have lost, a lot of years in preparation for one. So
Yeah.
I think I have put in too much time in research and research and research, and I did not come out of my cocoon for a very long time.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and another one is, I think, the thrill to just say something. You know,
mm,
I think I have totally lost that art of impulsive talk.
mm,
I definitely think before I
mm.
speak.
Okay.
What I've lost is these two, definitely.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So you're saying you lost that spontaneity along the way because you kind of held back, or was it because you weren't very sure? What was the reason?
Not the spontaneity. It is the impulsiveness that is.
Okay, okay,
I definitely weigh my pros and cons,
okay.
and I have learned to do it. At it might look, you know, you
Mm,
ask a question and I can reply to you in 30 seconds. It
mm,
doesn't look like the thought process happens, but I've trained myself to think in those 30 seconds about the 3, 4 areas that, you know, I will mess up with. So the
okay,
heightened awareness for me has automatically given me that arsenal to work with
okay.
always. So
Great.
I rarely say something and then say, oh my God, did I say that? No, I don't do that.
Okay, okay, got it. And if you were to advise someone who's starting out for the first time, maybe it's a college student, maybe it's someone who's joining a workplace for the first time, what is the first step he or she must take to build a personal brand?
Uh, Look deep into that well, that is you, and ask yourself, what is the promise you want to make? What is
Mm,
your personal ambition? What are your goals? And
mm,
then draw out a very detailed plan to get there.
mm, mm,
And don't
mm.
deviate from it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know the last part is not easy. Don't deviate.
Oh, yes. Both, in fact, I would tell you distractions are more than the roadblocks and obstacles in our path. I
Yeah.
have found that. We
Right.
stop and smile and take a selfie, and 2.5 years is lost automatically. I have seen that.
Right. Okay. Very good point. And so, if you had the opportunity to look back on your life and change probably one thing and do it differently about your personal brand, what would that be?
Um, I think I would definitely change the last question that I am still a work in progress. I would shout out more about myself,
Okay.
and I still believe my work, my work speaks for itself. But today we live in this world of digital selling, and so I think I'm changing that aspect of my life. And I would probably have started shouting myself when I did my PhD itself.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
should tell you, your book on internal communications, oh, that helped me a lot. In fact, when I was first doing, yours is one of those first books that I read, because there
Okay.
is this book about, there was no Indian author on
Correct.
India, internal communication. So yours was a one book and the research. So I immediately downloaded a copy on Kindle. I didn't even have the patience to wait for the paperback to reach home. I downloaded a Kindle copy, and I still have it on my mobile. And that was one of the first steps that I took to figure out how internal communication works in India. And that's from there I wrote my research problem after reading your book.
Wow. Okay. I'd really love to see your, research proposal and the final thesis, and I'd love to kind of read that. So, in terms of what, if I were to ask you one mantra for personal branding success, what's that recipe? How would you define it in one sentence?
One sentence: walk your talk.
Hmm. Nice. Okay. Walk your talk.
Because
Okay.
people are watching.
Sorry,
People are watching, and
people are watching. Yeah.
you will lose trust
Hmm.
for what you stand for if you don't do that.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. And yeah, I know you did mention personal brands, so I'll skip that question. But in terms of right now, we are going through a pandemic. There are crises which have happened in the past. But what is your recommendation for personal brands during crises? Do they pause what they do? Do they change course? What should be the strategy?
So see, the personal brand is um, what we are shouting out to others. All right, and um, but it is something that we live by. So whether there is a crisis or not, um, and I think crisis is the best time for us to showcase that what we believe in is actually true. So what is the point in having a great brand and great leadership and what we shout out for if it did not help us in times of need, in times of crisis? So this is exactly an opportunity, I would say, for all personal brands. Crises are all over us today. We're living in a virus infested pandemic, but we have always lived. 2007 was financial. 2003 was the 9/11. In between, we have had too many others. 2000 in India was a Y2K. Before that, a lot of millennials were not born. So, or they were in their diapers. So let's not remember them. I think we remember the globalization in 1992, and so
Yeah.
I think every 5 6 years we face
Mm,
something.
mm,
So
mm,
we cannot just move. We cannot take out your journey. But I
mm,
think these are the places that
mm,
build that authenticity for us. So I
mm,
believe in personal leadership. So I invest in myself. How do I show in this crisis that
mm,
self leadership is the one way that we can move out of this crisis? How do
mm,
I show that people who are working in remote teams today, they need self leadership? Because
mm,
your boss cannot come and look at you during a virtual meeting. So how do
mm,
I ensure that there are self leadership opportunities in every team today, in every organization, in every human being's life, because we are going through the crisis? So I think any crisis, COVID or anything else,
mm,
is our opportunity to showcase that the brand that we live and breathe and promise for is
mm,
actually worth and will sustain the test of time
mm,
and difficulties. Otherwise, we're just fair weather friends, and
mm.
that doesn't talk much about ourselves, does it?
Got it. Got it. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, and this topic, and this is the last question, but you have been working very closely with millennials, um, and of course Gen Z, and there are newer generations coming to the workplace. So, what's your advice for them? Because most of them think that they need to be on social media or they can be a one-time wonder on YouTube or whatever. So, what's your advice for them?
For the millennials and for the emerging generation, I would say one thing. There was a time when, the degrees and everything was the most important thing.
Mm,
Today is the time when your passion is the most
mm,
important thing. So
mm,
I don't care if your passion is in graphic design or in theater or in public speaking or in
mm,
understanding human beings or it is in artificial intelligence. Whatever is your passion, it can be in cricket or football or swimming or I don't
mm,
know, it can be in gaming.
mm, mm, mm,
There are two things that you need to figure this out. One, life is not from the couch. It
mm,
is not, life is not a spectator sport. So if you're
mm,
listening to music, watching movies, if you are,
mm,
just fiddling with a game, then that is being a spectator in your own life. No.
mm, mm,
Whatever your passion is, it need not be maths, physics, chemistry. It can be
mm,
anything where you ensure you put in 10,000 hours of it,
mm, mm,
working on it, not as a spectator, but as the action person. You
mm,
love gaming, design it. You love
mm,
swimming, go into that water. You love
mm,
cricket, pick up that bat. Watching someone else play is not called a passion.
mm, mm,
So this is definitely very important, specifically in this world
mm,
and of course we live in that selfie world. So
mm,
before you take that pic, think about what you actually are. Look
mm,
inside your look inside yourself, not just the photo that comes out, and
got it.
stand for it and work for it. You can work
Mm,
for anything, it's all right, but work
mm,
10,000 hours for
mm,
whatever you believe in. The
mm.
other side, you will, one way or the other, I think you'll figure it out.
Okay, great. That's brilliant. This has been fantastic to hear your views, and I'm sure this will give a whole different dimension to readers to understand both from how they should perceive themselves and how they should perceive the world around them. So really, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much for doing this. And what I'll do is I'll send you the transcript so that you get a chance to see it before it goes live.
Beautiful. Thanks so
Yeah.
much. Thanks
Thank
so much.
you. Thank you. Pleasure having you on the chat.
Oh, I love the experience too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.